Let's get this show on the road, folks. Welcome into First Base, or if you're new here, welcome in for your first time. It is time for another episode. Episode 5, this one is going to be solo with me again. Top of the second this time with Taylor. The next couple episodes are going to look a little bit different and feel a little bit different, a little more intimate, if you would say, just because my producer is on vacation right now. I will be traveling the next week to go home for my mom's retirement, which is huge, and I'm super excited and happy for her, and I'm really excited to get to spend some time with my family. But the episodes might look a little bit different than they have in the past right now, so we're going to be a little solo project with Taylor T here right now for you all. Before we get into this episode, I of course got a little story time for you guys that we have to get to. So this weekend, I'm with my friends. It's Memorial Day weekend. We're out at one of the bars. We're at Barstool. And my best friend, is across the bar talking to this guy. And it looks like from a distance to my other friend and I that they are hitting it off. They're talking, they're getting into conversation. He's like touching her arm. It looks like they're flirting. And we're like, okay, they're into this conversation. Like they're into things, good for her. We're like, he's cute, let's go. She walks over to our end of the bar. And I was like, yeah, get it. Like, you're doing good. Like, that looked like you guys were into it. And she was like, no, he's not really into me. He's into you. And I was like, oh, okay. And she's like, I don't know. I got a little bit of weird vibes from him, honestly, but he's apparently going to come over here in a few minutes and try to talk to you. So then at this point, I'm like, oh, great. Obviously, no, he's already going to come over and try to talk to me. She already said he was kind of weird. I already thought that he was hitting on my friend. So the whole situation's already a little muffled in my eyes. He comes over and he sets a drink down for me, which, very nice. Thank you. I appreciate you buying me the drink 100%. But then he goes, congratulations on being hot. What's it like to be hot? Like a hot girl at the bar. And I was just like, to me, I don't know. That was just kind of a weird pickup line. And I just need to know from the guys, the girls out there, from everybody, what would you think if somebody came up to you and said that? I appreciated the compliment. It was very nice. I appreciated the drink, very sweet. But I just thought it was a weird way to get into conversation. I just kind of looked down. I was like, I guess it's fun. I was just like, I don't know what to say. I felt like it would have been a little bit better. Maybe he just would have introduced himself, asked what my name was, and we would have gone over the basics first before going straight for that one-liner to come in and set his path. He was a little awkward. He was a little weird. And he was really a sweet man. He was there by himself and apparently on a group trip out of town or something. But I don't know, he was a little bit odd. He was really cute, but like the whole conversation was a little weird. I gotta know from you guys to start, is that a pickup line you would use? Is that a pickup line that would work on you if you're a girl? Let me know because I'm curious. Now let's head to First Base and go to the top of the second with me, Taylor. For today's episode of First Base, it's gonna be all categories of 5, Taylor's top 5s. So I'm going to pick a category throughout life, and I'm going to give you my top 5s and the reasons why I'm picking them. Thought it'd be fun to start with some sports-related stuff. So first, we're going to go over Taylor's top 5 athletes, and I'm going to tell you guys why they're my top 5. So coming in at 5th is going to be Cam Newton. And if you are a Cam Newton hater, I'm sorry, we cannot be friends. And I know he's kind of a controversial athlete. Some people love him, some people hate him. He can have an attitude and he likes to talk to the media. So that's why he tends to be a controversial athlete. But I always admired Cam Newton's confidence that he had on and off the field. He's got great style, and I love that he likes to give us a little something. There are so many athletes, and I now know from doing this podcast, that literally don't want to talk to media, don't want to be on podcasts, don't want anybody to know anything about their personality. I love that Cam Newton was always who he was from the start. Now, let's also look at what he was as an athlete. Played for the Patriots, played for the Panthers, 10 seasons in total in the NFL. 2015. Oh, baby, that was a year for Cam Newton. MVP season, went to the Super Bowl, didn't win, but the man nearly threw for 4,000 yards, 35 touchdowns, and just 10 interceptions. Newton was the man back then, and I hated to see the way that he kind of fell off within the NFL after that MVP season that he had there on the Panthers, because it was just one, whether you were a Cam Newton fan or not, it was fun to watch. I grew such a love for Cam Newton while he was in the NFL, and then especially when he had his MVP season. I remember I was having a really bad week, and I was living in Nebraska at the time, and my parents surprised me and just randomly sent me in the mail a Cam Newton jersey. So I still have my Cam Newton jersey. It's one of my favorite jerseys that I own in sports, and I will always be a Cam Newton fan. So Cam Newton, if you want to come on the podcast too, I would love to have you because I'm a gigantic fan. Coming in at number 4, Ezekiel Elliott, who is now once again a Dallas Cowboy. And I love saying that as a Cowboys fan. A lot of people ask me why I'm a Cowboys fan. Well, it all starts with my dad. I was born and raised. My dad grew up in a small town in Iowa called Muscatine his entire life. He had no professional team growing up. And back then, the Cowboys were always on national television. He had 3 channels to pick from, and he was going to be watching Emmitt Smith, Troy Aikman, Michael Irving on Sundays. So my dad became a Cowboys fan and then therefore moved to Illinois and raised me a Cowboys fan. I am not a Bears fan, for the record. I love Zeke. I can't even explain how much I love Zeke. After he got drafted to the Cowboys, I was already immensely excited because he's a Big Ten guy, and there were high hopes for him and what he was going to be able to do with the Dallas Cowboys. And he did very much produce in his early seasons. As we know, if you're a Cowboys fan or if you're an NFL fan, Tony Pollard ended up kind of taking over that quick back spot, and then we had Zeke Elliott being more of that power back for us to get into the end zone. I liked how that 1-2 punch was working. Then he went to the Patriots in free agency last season, and it tore my little heart apart. After I watched him and Dak and the rest of the Cowboys squad on Hard Knocks and how close they were, I just love Zeke's personality too. He's originally from Illinois. His mother was an athlete. His whole story and who he is outside of the sport, it just warms my heart. I just love Zeke. And I know that some Cowboys fans are like, we got Zeke back. Is he going to be able to do anything for us in that backfield? What's it going to be like this season? Because his numbers haven't been as great over the last few years. But I'm excited. I love Zeke. He's one of my favorite athletes. I also have an Ezekiel Elliott jersey, and I got that as soon as he was drafted to the Cowboys. But Ezekiel Elliott comes in at number 4 for me as one of my favorite athletes. Coming in at number 3, and this might shock you guys quite a bit, but I've got to go with Brooklyn Nets, Mikal Bridges. This is more of just personal reasons, but Mikal Bridges is one of the main reasons that I became a Suns fan. Growing up, my mom always talks about, I technically got to see MJ play back in Chicago because she was pregnant with me when he played in Chicago, and they would go to Bulls games all the time. So I did grow up a Bulls fan. Both my parents were huge basketball, huge Bulls fans. We have VHS tapes in our basement, stacks of them, of just MJ highlights in games that my dad used to record on the VHS. So I did grow up a Bulls fan, but then when I moved here to Arizona, the Suns were not great at all. Devin Booker was the big star in Phoenix, but Mikal Bridges was just loved by the Valley. Something about his personality, his persona, the way he plays, he's just such a lovable player, and I am such a big Mikal Bridges fan. So I always want him to succeed no matter where he goes, and I still think it's one of the biggest mistakes the Suns made was getting rid of Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson when they did. I don't think the game plans worked out for them as well as they thought it was going to, but Mikal Bridges, you always have love in my heart, even if you're not on the Phoenix Suns. Number 2, and I keep going back and forth between my 2 and my 1, so these are a little bit interchangeable, but I guess I'm gonna go with number 2 being Anthony Rizzo. Now, if you don't know who Anthony Rizzo is, he is now a New York Yankee, but the reason that I'm such a big lover of Anthony Rizzo is because he was the first baseman for the Chicago Cubs for years. Anthony Rizzo played for the Chicago Cubs back when Starlin Castro was still the shortstop. And again, the Cubs were not very good. But Anthony Rizzo is a leader that led that 2016 team to the World Series, and he has just been beloved by me always. I did admittedly always had the biggest crush on Anthony Rizzo when I was like in college and growing up in my early 20s. I know he's married, he's taken, and she's one lucky girl because Anthony Rizzo always high up on my list. One of my favorites. Anthony Rizzo is the reason, a big reason why that Cubs team succeeded the way that they did. He has so much love in my heart. Number one, and it's another Chicago Cubs first baseman, I've got to pick Derek Lee. Derek Lee is my first ever jersey I got, guys. I still have it. It's like this big. I'm like, wait, maybe I should go get it for y'all to see. Here it is, my first ever little Derek Lee jersey that I ever got. Derek Lee is a huge reason of why I'm a Cubs fan and why I love the Cubs. I was obsessed with him growing up. I actually made up a little cheer about him when I was younger. It was like something about wee, something like that. It had that in the ending, I remember. I don't know, but I loved Derek Lee, and I still always will. He is another guy that led the Cubs to victory in those early years, 2003. What a tough year for Cubs fans. And he made me become such a lover of the Cubs. I just loved his personality. He always had the big smile on his face. He was a great leader on the team. And Derek Lee is my favorite athlete of all time. I know it's probably a little bit random for some of you, but he is. Love Derek Lee. Now let's go through Taylor's top 5 overrated athletes of all time. Coming in at number 5 for my most overrated athlete, quarterback Terry Bradshaw. Now, I know, Bradshaw, he seems like an awesome guy, and I'm sure he totally is. Love his personality on TV. He's great. Love Bradshaw. And I'm not saying he was a horrible athlete or anything like that by any means. He did lead the Pittsburgh Steelers to 4 Super Bowl championships. So that's saying a lot. I just think he maybe shouldn't be in like the top 10 quarterback conversation. When you look at some of his stats, things that like make me raise an eyebrow a little bit, 212 touchdowns to 210 interceptions. Those don't seem like top 10 quarterback numbers to me. Terry Bradshaw's got to be number 5 on my overrated athletes list. Most overrated athlete, Boston Celtics, Jason Tatum. I feel like I'm gonna catch so much heat for this right now, and I might be eating my own words in the next few weeks if the Celtics win the NBA championship. But here's my reason for why I think Tatum is overrated. First of all, let's start with this year. He made the NBA first team overall. I just think if I had to push somebody out, it would be Jason Tatum, and I really think Jalen Brunson deserves that position. Tatum's just a little bit overrated, I think. He relies so heavily on that 3 ball, which the entire Celtics offense does, but he gives me like Paul George kind of vibes sometimes, and Paul George is obviously an all-star, great player, but would I say he's like in the conversation of top 10 best basketball players of all time? No. And I feel like some people want to put Tatum in that conversation when it's way too early. Tatum and the Celtics have choked multiple years while being in the playoffs, and they've still yet to win a championship. I know Tatum's only 26. He's got plenty of time to do things. And again, I might be eating my own words, but right now I just feel like the NBA crowd and the NBA audience and NBA commentators, to me, slightly overhyped Jason Tatum. I do still love Tatum. I think he's a great player. I have nothing against the Boston Celtics. I just gotta say, I think Jason Tatum's slightly overrated right now, but it is also hard to say that when he hasn't completed his career yet. Coming in at number 3 for my most overrated athlete, we're gonna go with Dodgers pitcher, Sandy Koufax. And I think people are gonna just come from my head right now while I'm saying this a little bit, but here is my reasoning. 1963, they expanded the strike zone within baseball, and that Dodgers mound was a little bit higher up than what it was supposed to be back in the day. He pitched in the perfect baseball conditions. Part of the reason why I think we saw the stats we did out of him. There are plenty of other pitchers that we've seen nowadays that could emulate numbers close to Koufax's. Give me Jacob deGrom or Clayton Kershaw for that matter. I just think there are so many pitchers I could pick to be in the top 10 before Sandy Koufax. I mean, Cy Young, Pedro Martinez, Greg Maddux, Roger Clemens. I could keep going, but you see my point. I think Koufax partially was as good as he was because he pitched in the perfect baseball conditions at the right time in baseball. Number 2 for my most overrated athlete of all time on Taylor's list, Odell Beckham Jr. And I will fight anybody who tries to tell me that he is not one of the most overrated athletes of all time. Let's rewind back to 2015. He had the epic catch against the Cowboys as he was a Giant. It was insane. It was an amazing catch. I'm not doubting that. And as a Cowboys fan, it pains me to even say that. With all of that, Odell Beckham Jr. to me is the epitome of what I don't want to see in sports. Over the years, yes, he's been injury plagued, but the way he held out for money and didn't do certain things and only wanted to be on teams that he thought could possibly win a Super Bowl. And I'm not saying he's the only athlete that does that. There are a lot of them. But to me, that's not the type of player that I'm into. I want to see guys that are out there because they want to play the game. And yes, I know it's a business at the end of the day and they're trying to make money and all of that. I totally get it. But I need to see some love and some passion for the sport. And I feel like OBJ is in the headlines for a million other things besides being good at his position. But then he always wants to be known for being good as a wide receiver in the NFL, yet he's like barely played over the last couple years. I feel like if he would have never made that catch, I don't think we'd be talking about OBJ at the caliber we do as a receiver. If you I added up what his numbers have been receiving yards wise over the last 4 seasons, it's just slightly higher than what happened the year prior to the last 4 years. So that's crazy to me. His numbers are nowhere near what they used to be. And why are we talking about him like he deserves the world? Like he's going to go to Miami, he's going to deserve the world. He doesn't. My number 1 most overrated athlete of all time has got to be LeBron James. I'm sorry, I'm not a LeBron James fan, and this probably goes back to the fact that I'm from Chicago, grew up a Bulls fan, and MJ will always be the GOAT in basketball, and anybody that tries to tell me otherwise, I'm coming for your head. Now, I know LeBron James is, of course, one of the greatest athletes of all time. I am not doubting that at all. I don't really admire that much of LeBron James's play. I think part of that is I don't love how he's constantly looking to draw fouls or flopping. It just isn't what I would love to see for the sport of basketball anymore, but I know that's what the NBA has gone to over the last couple of years. I just don't really enjoy it. I also sometimes wonder if LeBron James wouldn't have gone to the Heat, which I remember that little press conference on ESPN where he decided he was leaving the Cavs and he like had the hats lined up. Like we were back in like high school picking what college we were going to. And he's like, the Heat. And it was just like, why is everything to do with him? And I just feel like sometimes he has to have an opinion on everything and then like whatever he says is gospel. And I'm just like, why? He's a basketball player. Granted, he's probably a very intelligent man, has other skills as well that I'm unaware of. But not everything LeBron James says on every single topic is the end all be all. LeBron James, you're my most overrated athlete. Not saying you're not one of the greatest of all time, because you are, but you're overrated to me. Now let's get into some Taylor's top 5s that are more life topics. Taylor's top 5s in the dating world. And I'll accompany these with a few stories. So coming in at number 5 for me is men that are assertive make the plans. For me as a woman who's living a busy life, when it comes to dating, I don't want it to feel like a chore to me. I don't want to feel like at the beginning, I'm requiring a bunch of effort. I like men to court me. I'm traditional, I'm old school, and I want to see effort. And what I mean by being assertive and doing the right thing is I can recall many a times in dating where guys have just straight up made the plans right away and sent me like, hey, here's the day, time, reservation, whatever, after they obviously checked to make sure I was good for that day. But I love that because I like not having to think. They really want to see me. They're putting in the effort. They're showing that they want to get to know me. I like some assertiveness with that kind of stuff. Here's an example, a really, really like older example, but it's a good one. And I feel like this to me was like the epitome of effort in what I saw. So I meet this guy while he is out here in Scottsdale on vacation for a boys' golf trip. He didn't even golf, but he still came for the golf trip. Him and I happened to meet up at the bar, like sitting at the bar, and we like looked at each other and just pretty much hit it off. We started talking. Long story short, I hang out with him and his friends, and my friends hung out with his friends as well the whole weekend. And I feel like, I can't really even explain it. There was just like an instant click kind of between us. But I knew that he did not live here. He lived across the country in Kentucky, and I was in Arizona. After he left, I kept thinking to myself, like, he said he was going to talk to me, he said he would FaceTime me, all that kind of stuff. But I was like, well, we'll see if that actually happens. I was young. So I was like, I I don't know. I was smitten over a man that lived all the way across the country, but I also was trying to be realistic about what to expect. He landed, and one of the first things he did when he got home was FaceTime me. And I was like, okay, wait, maybe this guy's being serious. He really started to put in effort over the next, I would say, like 3 days. I mean, he was FaceTiming me after work. We would talk. We would text throughout the day. He was always sending me good morning texts. Like, he was putting in the effort even from afar, which said a lot to me, especially when you're at that early stage of getting to know somebody. After those 3 days first went by of us FaceTiming and getting to know each other even more than we had from spending the few days out here together that we did in Arizona, he just took the lead, was assertive, and was like, I want you to come out here and visit me. If you're free these days, I want to buy you a ticket and I want you to come out and I want us to get to know each other better and really start to see if this could be something. And to me, that was like the most attractive thing ever. He was putting in effort. He was just doing the actions. It wasn't just all talk, it was actions. He just made me feel wanted. So the effort was big there. Unfortunately, didn't turn out. That's a whole another story for a different day. But I did love the effort and the assertion that was put into that. So that would be number 5 on my Taylor's top 5 of dating. Number 4, this one is simple, easy, and I know some girls try to act like they don't love it, but flowers, boys. I love fresh flowers. I buy myself fresh flowers every single week. It'd be nice if I had a man that was buying me flowers every single week, but I do love when I get a bouquet of flowers from a man. It means a lot to me. It brightens my day. It brightens my week. I love to see it. It reminds me of the person, whether it's sitting in my living room, my kitchen, my bedroom, whatever the case may be. I love fresh flowers. They're beautiful. They smell good. They make me happy. They make me happy. Maybe I'm a cliche girl for that, but I do love a beautiful bouquet of flowers. And there have been many boys that have gotten me flowers over time, but I will say it's something that fizzles usually. They'll buy flowers at the beginning, and then as time goes on, they forget that I still like the flowers. So get your girl flowers, even if she says she doesn't like them. Everybody likes flowers. Coming in at number 3, good morning and good night texts. Again, I'm a simple girly, but I think that good night and good morning texts make all the difference, or a phone call. I'm not a huge texter. My friends talk about it all the time too. I'm like horrible responding to people, and it's not intentional. I just like, I don't know, I'm not good at texting. I would prefer a phone call, to be honest, because if I'm on the phone, I can chatty Cathy it up all day over text. I just feel like I'm not good with texting. I'm not a good texter. But I do love, whether it's a phone call or a text in the morning or at night, a little good morning, good night text always makes me feel good. It's nice to know that the person that you're seeing or that you're interested in or that you're dating, wherever you may be in the stages of your romantic relationship, that person's thinking of you. And I'm not saying that girls couldn't be better about this too. Like, you can definitely throw in a good morning or good night text to the guy that you're talking to as well. But it does feel good to be the girl on the receiving end of that. I'm a huge words of affirmation person. So to know that person's giving me a little bit of words, even if it's just like a sweet little sentence, that they're thinking of me, they want me to know that they're thinking of me, and that they care enough to see how my day went or to start my day on a good note. So those are huge to me. Again, very simplistic, very easy things. Ooh, and I'm gonna give you guys a tip with that. A dating tip for men. If you're gonna send a girl a good morning or a good night text, make it sweet and follow it up with a question, but something specific. Don't just be like, how was your day? Say you know that she works out every morning and goes and takes a Pilates class. Ask, how did the Pilates class go? Or what was the most difficult part of Pilates today? Give her something to go off of, keep the conversation going, and let her know that you're interested. And again, it goes back to effort. Coming in at number 2 of Taylor's top 5 dating tips would be men that want you to meet their friends early on and often. Now, some people see this as a red flag because they're thinking if they can invite you to just meet their friends right off the bat, who's to say they couldn't let a million other girls meet their friends right off the bat? And that could be totally true. If he's inviting you, then he probably could be inviting a lot of other people as well, or a lot of other women as well, and that could be seen as a slight red flag. But for me, I think this one's a little personal to me. If the guy's introducing me to his friends early, it makes me more comfortable to introduce my friends to him early as well. And my friends are a really big part of my life. I don't have any actually, family out here in Arizona. So my friends are like my family, and my weekends are spent with my friends. My downtime is spent with my friends. And I want my friends to get to know the guy I'm seeing and vice versa. So I feel like if I'm getting to know friends early, they're giving me a little bit of a deeper dive into who they are. And I also feel like, girls, you can always kind of maneuver a little bit of stories to find things out about the guy that you're dating. Check for those red flags, get some old ex-dating stories out of his friends, see if he brings girls around a lot. You can learn a lot about a person by being around their friends. What's that age-old saying? Show me the 5 closest people to you and I'll show you who you are. That's why I want to get to know a guy's friend earlier rather than later. Coming in number 1 on Taylor's top 5 dating tips is be creative. Now, I'm about to toot my ex's horn for a hot second, but he was a creative one and I greatly appreciated it. When he asked me to be his girlfriend, he did it by creating this entire collage box of everything we had gone and done together over time. And on the top, he did like this little chalkboard writing sign that asked me to be his girlfriend. It was so above and beyond anything I expected, and it was really cute and done so creatively. I gotta give him credit for it because it melted my heart and it was a keepsake that I would have forever. And he was physically creative along with mentally creative. So there's an example. But I feel like when guys put thought into creativity of dates or creativity of making something for somebody or doing the small things, or say the girl's not feeling good and you guys are newly dating, like bringing over a little care basket of like get well goodies. Like stuff like that is just so creative, so thoughtful, and it makes me happy. I love a person that can be creative, and I'm a really creative person myself too. So to see that other expression being emulated through somebody else in conjunction with trying to make me happy is icing on the cake for me. I just think it's a top dating tip, and men need to get more creative with what they're doing for women or what they're saying to women. All of that. Make women feel special again. Make women feel special again. That's going to be my slogan for my presidential campaign of 2024. Make dating creative again, men. Get on it. This last segment's going to be fun. Taylor's top 3 this time bad dating experiences. Now I'm going to teach you guys what not to do a little bit. So here we go. Coming in at number 3, this was a really not great experience. Partially my own fault, but also him moving just way too quickly. So here we go. This was quite a few years ago. I meet this guy. He's a little bit older than me, like, I don't know, 6 years older than me. Asks me on a date to go to Postino's, and we didn't know a whole lot about each other. I just knew he was also from Illinois, and that was about it. The date's going great. Like, we have a lot in common, great conversation. Things were awesome. And then I just said, do you have anything like crazy that you want to tell me, or any like thing that would be a red flag? And we were just having fun, good conversation on the date. And he was like, I don't think it's a red flag, but some people could. And he was like, I have 2 kids. For me personally, I don't know if I envision myself as somebody else's step parent, especially at that point. I was only like 25. So that just was like, whoa, like that would have been way too much for me. I wasn't ready for that. And still to this day, I generally wouldn't date somebody who has children, just because for me, I don't see that in the cards. Anybody who is a mother or a father, like, I salute you guys for being single parents and doing what you can. I'm sure it's a really hard job. I don't have any kids, so I don't know from personal experience, but I couldn't see myself personally dating somebody that already had kids. He tells me this though, and I'm like, well, our conversation's going so great. Oh, I forgot to mention also, I found out that he had actually worked for my dad, like back in the past, and we didn't even notice that. Like, he told me where he worked. I told him who my dad was, and then we were like, whoa, mind blown that technically my dad already knew who he was from years past. But anyway, so we had a lot in common. Finish up our dinner. We decided to go for another drink, and I was like, at this point, it's a first date. He did just tell me this. It does freak me out a little bit, but you know what? I'm getting to know him, and things are going really well, so I don't really want to leave the date. We go, we get a drink. We're still having a great conversation. It's going well. It was a Wednesday. Everything was like closed. Everything in Arizona honestly closes on a Wednesday at like 10 p.m. at the latest. He was like, would you want to come back to my place for a little bit? We can sit out on the porch, have a drink. Normally, I would always say no to this, but I felt really comfortable with him. I felt like we were having a really good time. I made it pretty clear to him nothing was going to be happening with me going over there, but I wanted to keep the date going. Like, we were just having a really great time. I go back to my place first. I let my little man kook out, and then I was like, okay, I'll go with him. So we get to his place and he makes us a drink and we're sitting there chilling, and asked if I was a gardener. And I was like, I don't garden very often, if ever, especially at that time. And he was like, do you want to do some gardening? And I was like, well, if you're gonna garden, I mean, I guess I'll garden a little bit. I'll plant a seed. So he gardens, and then I garden. And then he was like, I gotta go to the bathroom really quick. I'll be right back. So he goes in to go to the bathroom, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, I have never felt so lightheaded in my life. I didn't know what to do. I put my head down on the table like this, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, holy cow. I just felt like I was we had like the spins going on big time up in here. And I was just like, I don't know what to do about this. I feel terrible. And I kind of started freaking out a little bit because my vision felt like very blurry. He comes back and my head's still on the table, and he's like, are you okay? And I was like, I don't really feel that good. I feel really lightheaded. I really feel like I need to go home. I don't feel good. And he was like, hey, it's all right. Like, how about let's go inside. You can lay down on the couch, whatever. I go to stand up. I couldn't stand up. I like literally lost my balance and started to fall over. And I, in my head then, immediately am going to, oh my God, he roofied me. So I'm thinking in this moment, he roofied me. I like couldn't walk. He picks me up and he's taking me to lay me down. At least like, yeah, that's what I was thinking was happening in my head. And he's taking me to lay me down. I'm like, oh my God, freaking out. But the next thing I know, I black out, completely black out. And I wake up. I'm laying on carpet on a landing of like after the stairs, if that makes sense. And I'm on the ground, and he's like next to me, and he's like, Taylor. And he's got washcloths, and he's like patting my head, and I'm dripping sweat. And he's like, Taylor, I think we need to take you to the hospital. I don't know what's going on. Like, and he's panicking. And I come to, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel sick. Like, I didn't know what to do. And then I quickly realized, though, with how panicked he was and the fact that I knew I was okay and that nothing had happened, and how freaked out he was. And he's like getting me bags, wiping off my forehead and freaking out. And he's like, we need to call 911. He was panicking. I was like, okay, that didn't happen. But I was like, what just happened? I was like, just give me a minute. I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, in my head, this is so embarrassing. I just passed out. After a few minutes, I started to feel better. I actually felt 100% normal. And he was like, I think you may have greened out a tiny bit. And I was like, oh, that's never been a thing for me before. And you know, I wasn't an avid gardener, so I didn't really know. With that though, I was very nauseous. So he was a complete gentleman, and he was like, I really think that you should stay here tonight. He's like, you can take my bed. I will go sleep on the couch in the living room. I just want to make sure that you're okay, because he's like, I probably should have warned you on the potency of that before doing it. I wake up in the morning and I was thinking in my head, this man literally is gonna hate me and probably thinks I'm such a loser. But actually, he ended up making breakfast in bed. It was really sweet. And then a few days later, he like asked me to go on he took off work and like took me up to the Grand Canyon for the first time. And I had never been to the Grand Canyon before. I had mentioned that to him on our date. And he like made a whole little weekend trip out of it. And we stayed up in the Grand Canyon, and it was really cool, really fun. We got back, but then after that, like, it was just too fast. He immediately was like asking me to be his girlfriend. And I was like, you have 2 kids, you were divorced. Like, there's a lot of other things we got to think about before we just jump into being in a relationship. A lot of other people that we need to think about. And I didn't really like how fast he was with that. And he was not very nice when I told him that I felt rushed and pressured to get into a relationship. Cut that off. So it turned out to be not great. I will say he was nice, but don't rush girls and don't pressure them too quickly. Even if you think things are going great, especially in a situation like that, there's a lot of other pieces that you've got to work through in the puzzle before everything's going to fit together. But it was much too quick. Number 2, in the second worst dating experiences that I've had, would probably be with one of my long-term exes that I had. He was the reason I moved out to Arizona. He and I were together for a year long distance, and then I came out here and took a job and started living with him. And our relationship was a little crazy, rocky through the beginning. When I first moved here, after a month of being here, he so nicely told me that he bought a new apartment and I needed to move out of the one that we were living in together because he wanted to break up, and he was done after he made me move out here. So that was fun, but it got worse because then we got back together after he decided that he was being an idiot. We moved into that new apartment together, and we were together for about 3 more years, and our relationship was pretty fine then. Like, it was just pretty go with the flow-ish, I would say. We had 2 dogs together, Cook and another dog, Sully, who I miss a lot. We had 2 dogs together. We, were living out in Arizona, working, living life, having a good time. I decided to go on a girls' trip to Europe with one of my best friends at the time. And I will say I invited him to go originally because I really wanted to go on the Europe trip with him. But because of work, he wasn't able to do it. So a girlfriend and I planned a trip together. We did Italy and Greece, and I had the most insane, beautiful, amazing trip ever. And obviously while we were there was a big time difference between the 2 of us with communicating, but we still made it work the best that we could while we were apart. It was only a 2-week trip. Before I had left for the trip, he had mentioned to me that he might get a promotion and that he was interested in taking it, and it was gonna be in California. And he said, when you get back from your trip, we need to talk about if we wanna move to California. Maybe we should go out and look at some places. He's originally from California too, so he was very high on that idea because all of his family was out there. And I wasn't against it, but I definitely thought we need to talk about it and think about it. He picks me up from the airport when I get home from Europe. We pull into our parking spot in our complex, and we're walking inside, and he says, don't freak out when you get in there. I have a little bit of a surprise. And me, I'm thinking like, what did he do? It's gonna be so nice. Like, I can't wait. I pull up in the door, and I look inside our apartment, and it's completely bare. There is not a thing in there. Our couch is gone, our coffee table's gone, all the kitchen utensils are gone, the bowls and the plates are gone, our dogs are running around, and there's just a mattress laying there and my clothes in the closet. I looked around, and he explained to me very quickly that he decided to take the job. He was moving to California without me, and he had already packed everything up, and he was leaving tomorrow. And that was that. He did leave. And it quickly, our 4-year relationship was done pretty much without any explanation. And I was left kind of high and dry to figure things out. As much as that situation really took a toll on my mental health, because I went bonkers for a while being upset over what happened, trying to put reason behind it. I try to look at it as a blessing in disguise because I would have never gotten on my own 2 feet and stayed in Arizona out here if that wouldn't have happened. Once I came to grasp with everything that was happening, I decided to get a brand new apartment, my own apartment, move into it. I got to decorate it the way I want. I made all of my friends out here that I have now, who have become like my core group of friends, really after all that happened. So it opened me up to a whole new world of people that matter so much to me in my life right now, and getting to live in an area that's beautiful on my own, making my own life. So try to look at it as a blessing in disguise, but communication, y'all. Don't leave people high and dry like that. It's a tough thing to go through and to grasp, especially after a relationship that was that long. It was pretty crazy to come in and see my entire apartment empty, and the life that I thought I was building towards completely doing a 180 and changing within like a 24-hour span of time. I will say though, he did come crying back to me after a week of being in Arizona. He tried to get me to move to California to be with him, and let's just say I stood on my own 2 feet. I did not go to California, and I'm still here in Arizona, so they always come back, ladies. Now time to go into my number 1 worst dating story of all time. Here we go. This was quite a long time ago. I was in Miami on a girls' trip with my friends, and it was 3 of us. I think it was Memorial Day weekend. We were in Miami, so it's the anniversary of this. We were a little bit crazy, and we wanted to go on a boat. So we decided to make a Hinge profile of the 3 of us, but we explained that we were visiting in town. We wanted to meet these people first and to get to know them, and then if they, we wanted to go out on a boat basically for the weekend, which just even the fact that we did that, I'm like, what was going through our heads? But I'm being transparent with you guys. We did do that. We matched this one guy. He liked my picture, said I was really pretty, and he's like, my friends and I are going out on the boat this Monday for the long weekend. You guys could totally come. We're all around the same age as you, yada, yada, yada. We meet up with them. We're like, okay, cool. they're normal, they're fine. Like, we'll go out on the boat with them. So we get on this boat. We have a great boat day. And I will say, even though like the guy liked my picture or whatever on Hinge, like we weren't like flirting or anything like that while we were on the boat. We were just all having fun, swimming, playing like games. We were just having such a good time. Everybody was just having a blast together. And we were like, this was such a good decision that we decided to do this. Him and I, though, eventually towards like the end of the boat day, start to actually talk and we start to get into conversation. I'm like, okay, like we get along really well. After the boat, he was like, you guys should all come to dinner with us. So we went back to our place. We decided to go to dinner with them in Brickell and we had a really good time. And I was like, him and I are kind of really starting to hit it off. And we were. I was really excited about it. It felt right. It felt very good. I knew I was leaving the next day. You know, you just never know. He knew I was leaving too, and he kept telling me he was gonna try to make it work. We were gonna communicate, whatever, but I was like, well, we'll see if that happens. I get back to Arizona. He was still all about me for 2 weeks, I would say. We were talking every day. Things were going really well. And then he told me he decided to book a ticket to come out here and visit in Arizona. He would get an Airbnb while he was here. So of course, like I was all worried, like, I'm like, you're not staying with me, I barely know you. But he got an Airbnb, but he's like, I just want to spend time with you, take you out on dates, us get to know each other better. Like he's like, I can afford to do this with work. And I was like, okay, sounds great. So he comes out for a week. It was really great. Actually, it might've been, I think it was like 2 weeks. It was like 2 weeks. He had an Airbnb out here. We were seeing each other while he was here for the 2 weeks. It was going great. Absolutely great. He had a trip booked to Hawaii for the next week, and he was possibly going to go out there and meet his sister who was there with her husband on this trip in Hawaii. He asked me to go with, and I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go. I take that back. I had to go home in between this for my sister's bachelorette party that I was throwing her. But then he booked the ticket to Hawaii, and he was like, you should come with me to Hawaii the next week. So we met in California, and we flew from California to Hawaii, and the trip started off really fun. We took surf lessons. We were doing a lot of really fun activities. We did a lot of outdoor stuff. We did shopping. We were at the ocean, at the beach, like, and it was stunning. Loved it, had a great time. His sister, her husband were fun until we decided to drive with them like a couple hours away to go do something up in one of the mountains or go to this secret beach. And him and her got into this gigantic fight in the car. And the husband and I, like, we felt so awkward. We pulled the car over and they got out of the car and were like going at it. I didn't know what to do. I felt so uncomfortable. It raised such a red flag to me, especially the way he was speaking to his sister. I was like, whoa, I don't like the way that the tone, I don't like the way he's talking to her. It started to really become a problem a little bit. And then as the rest of the trip went on, I started realizing that it was becoming a little bit of a pattern the way he spoke. And then he started telling me that part of the reason he felt like he was arguing with the sisters because she didn't like me that much. And I was like, okay, what did I do? Like, I've been nothing but nice to your sister. I really liked her. I thought things were good. Like, now I'm like worried that his sister doesn't like me. So it started raising some red flags for me. But I was like, I do like him. And I forgot to throw in, before we went to Hawaii, we also had booked a trip for us to go to Chicago and for him to come and meet my family. That was such a good idea, Taylor. Good thinking on your part. So after Hawaii, we flew to Chicago, and I was starting to think that maybe this wasn't right, but I didn't really know what to do. We're at my parents' house. We're sitting there. My mom's trying to get to know him, and we're watching TV, and we're sitting on the couch doing as we do in our Midwest home in Illinois. And there was a commercial on that had to do with like Italy and Rome. So my mom said, oh, do you travel a lot? Have you ever been to Italy? Probably because that commercial's on, that's why she said that. And he was like, oh yes, I've been to Italy. And he's like, I kind of have a crazy story of why I went to Italy. My mom's like, oh, I love a good story. Like, tell me about it. And he's like, I was living in San Francisco at the time. I was at the LA Fitness or some whatever fitness. And he's like, I was in the sauna and I start chatting with this girl in the sauna. And she tells me the next day that she's going to be leaving for Rome. And on a whim, she was like, we're hitting it off right now. You should just book a ticket and go with me. So he goes, I booked the ticket. I went with her. And all we did was, and he goes, we got to Rome. And he just kind of looks at my mom and he goes, we just made sweet, sweet love for hours and hours underneath the Italian moon. We just traveled. And he was like, and basically just did what we do for hours and hours at a time while in Rome and in Italy. And he's like, it was a trip I would never forget. And I'm like sitting there. I had already heard this story once, by the way, which I probably should have thought was already a red flag. I'd heard it from him. But the fact that he was sitting there and telling my mom this story, like he could have just said, I went to Italy once. I went with a girl that I dated in the past. It was really fun. Tell some of the things they did. Not that, not the sweet, sweet love. I don't want to hear about the sweet, sweet love. And I don't think my mom does either. My mom's face looked at him. My mom's just too much of a sweet pea to say anything and just looks at him and she's like, wow, it sounds like it was a great trip. And I'm just thinking in my head, you are literally dating a new girl and you're meeting her family for the first time and you're going to tell them about you being with another girl in Italy that you had just met and all the little rendezvousing you guys were doing. I was like, here's where T's Tude came out. I've never gotten so mad at a man in my life. I looked at him while I was sitting there with my mom and my sister on the couch and I go, you've got to be kidding me. And he looked at me like so puzzled and I was like, the fact that you think it's okay to speak about those kind of things in front of my mom who you're just meeting is completely inappropriate. I feel like it's disrespectful to me, disrespectful to my family. It's not how I foresee my future significant other demonstrating their actions or being in front of my family and having that type of relationship with them. I was like, especially because this is the first time we're meeting, they don't need to hear that. I just felt like that story could have been kept up in his vault. Like, why did he need to say that? He was like, what? Like, I didn't mean anything by it, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I think we need to go talk in private. I go outside with him, ripped into him about it. And then he proceeds to tell me, well, I told that story to just try to rise a little sense of jealousy within you. And I was like, what? What do you mean? What do you mean you were trying to rise jealousy out of me? First of all, I'm not jealous of the story. I don't care. I'm more upset that I feel disrespected in this situation. And then within that, literally right then and there, I said, I don't think that this is going to work between us. I don't see the way that you operate as the same that I operate. I was already having some questions beforehand and now I really have got some problems. I was like, I really think that you should book a trip to go back to Miami tomorrow. I just don't think that this is it. I don't think it's working out. He was like devastated. He was devastated that I said that, but I made him book the ticket home. He went home. He tried to win me back for like a good literal 2 months after that. He even actually gets crazier. I could tell another story about him. So if you guys want to hear that on the next episode, because I'm getting too long-winded, we could talk about it, about the sameness of how he tried to win me over, because there was craziness that happened there too. But he did try to win me over for like a long time. Actually, he still occasionally definitely messages me too, trying to see where I'm at in life and all this stuff. And then I just hit that block button. Not for me. Don't overshare. Don't overshare things. Like, read the room. Read the room. That's going to be something that I have learned through my bad dating experiences is, men, please read the room and check for who you're saying and what you're saying. Thanks. We all would appreciate it. Time to wrap up episode 5, top of the second of First Base with me. Let's go to my Taylor's topics for the week. And first is going to be Bing cherries. And I don't even know if these are in for the week or if they're out. Maybe they're on the list because they're so out. And let me explain why. I go to the grocery store. I see in the produce section, they have cherries. I'm a big fruit girl. I love me some fruit. And I taste test. Take one out, I take a little nibble of it and I'm like, oh, these are juicy, these are ripe, these are good, fresh, we're getting them. So I grab the whole big bag and I'm like, yes, I can't wait to eat these when I get home. Like, I'm so excited about these cherries. I go get the rest of my groceries and I go to self-checkout, ring everything up, and the last thing I ring up is the cherries. I scan them and then the thing says, place your item on the scale. So I place my item on the scale, the cherries, it weighs it, and the cherries, y'all, the Bing cherries were $15.54. $15.54 for cherries. My mind blew. It blew up in that moment. I've never put anything back at the grocery store. I put it back. I put the cherries back. I didn't get the cherries. And that just goes to show cherries are hard to get, baby. Cherries play hard to get. They're pricey. They're expensive. They're bougie. I didn't get the cherries, but I love cherries and they're very in for me and I want the cherry prices to go down. Number 2 on Taylor's topics for the week is gonna be pickle juice. And pickle juice is kind of always in for me, but lately it's just like, I open the fridge, I looked that I had pickles in there, and I love pickles. I love me some pickles. I love them dill. I love them spicy. I love them kosher. I like Clausen especially, though. Those are like my favorite. I grab a Clausen pickle, and I'll eat it, but then I like look at that jar of goodness, and I'm like, my lips, literally, I start salivating. I want the pickle juice. And you know what I do? I grab that pickle juice and I chug it. Every darn time I open the fridge this week. It's been nonstop. I don't know if I'm dehydrated. It's getting really hot out here in Arizona. But that salty goodness of that pickle juice is top notch. And for the record, nobody else is eating out of those pickle jars. My roommate, Cher, she hates pickles. So it's only me eating out of that pickle jar. Thank you. Lastly, for my Taylor's topics for the week, it's gotta be hockey. Y'all, I don't know if you know this, but I did grow up loving hockey. I was a big Blackhawks fan, especially during the dynasty of the Blackhawks within Chicago. Paid a lot of attention to hockey, so I know how the sport's played. I've been to hockey games. I enjoyed the sport. When I moved out here to Arizona, people are just not as into it, and I feel like I kind of fell out of watching it the way I used to. But lately, I've been trying to get back into it, and I have been enjoying the hockey playoffs so much. There's been a man in my life that's been showing me a lot with hockey playoffs lately, and I am just loving it. It like is bringing me back to why I loved hockey so much. The roughness, the toughness, the way hockey players aren't just athletes for the sense that they're moving the puck, but the fact that they have to skate on top of it is just so crazy, that they're that graceful yet athletic and tough at the same time. I love it. And the hockey playoffs are the most intense in all of sports. I'll say it right now. I do love baseball playoffs a lot too, but hockey playoffs, you did not watch the series of Vancouver and Edmonton now leading up to the Western Conference Finals against the Stars and the Oilers. You missed out, let me tell you. It was so entertaining. It still is so entertaining. The series is tied 1-1 right now. Watch some hockey, y'all. With that, episode 5 of First Base is coming to a close. Thanks y'all so much for watching and listening. If you're new here, please subscribe, give it a like, rate and review me wherever you listen to your podcasts, and I'll see you next time.